Well, Elon Musk is now the richest person on the planet.
More than half the satellites in space are owned and controlled by one man.
Starting his own artificial intelligence company.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. Legitimate.
He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
There is a reason the U.S. government is so reliant on him.
Elon Musk is a scam artist, and he's done nothing.
Anything he does is fascinating to people.
Welcome to Elon Inc., where we discuss Elon Musk's vast corporate empire, his latest gambits and antics, and how to make sense of it all. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. This week, we'll discuss some of the fallout from Musk's dramatic appearance at the New York Times DealBook Conference. One of many noteworthy moments is when Elon began talking politics.
I'm not saying I'd vote for Trump, but I mean, this is definitely a difficult choice, yeah.
It's not news that Elon has been moving to the right in the past few years, but it's been a complicated turn. It doesn't fit neatly with his leadership on electrifying vehicles to address climate change. But on the other hand, he's taken an anti-woke stance in his posts on X, among other moves, like moving some of his manufacturing to Texas. Oh, and he also told advertisers to go fuck themselves. We'll come back to that. To figure out what Elon's role could be in American politics as we enter a presidential election year, we have Sarah Fryer, who leads our big tech team here at Bloomberg. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Dana Hull, who covers Tesla, among other Musk projects. Dana.
Hey, hey.
And Max Chafkin, senior reporter at Bloomberg Businessweek.
Hello.
Okay, so a moment ago, we played a bit of Musk discussing who he would vote for next year with Aaron Ross Sorkin at the New York Times DealBook Conference. Here's that full exchange.
Could you see yourself voting for President Biden? If it's a Biden-Trump election, for example?
I think I would not vote for Biden.
You'd vote for Trump?
I'm not saying I'd vote for Trump, but I mean, this is definitely a difficult choice, yeah. You know.
Would you vote for Nikki Haley? Nikki Haley, by the way, wants all social media names to be exposed, as you know.
No, I think that's outrageous. Yeah, no, I'm not going to vote for some pro-censorship candidate.
Okay, Dana, so let's start with just a primer on Elon's political leanings.
Well, I mean, I think as we've all said, they're complicated. He does not neatly fit into a box. And I think he's really a political chameleon who kind of waxes and wanes depending on how it impacts his businesses and his personal fortune. So when Tesla was a young company that was really struggling for survival and President Obama was elected and the Recovery Act poured millions of dollars into Silicon Valley companies that were investing into clean tech, Tesla was a big beneficiary of that. And, you know, Musk was widely viewed as kind of like a left-leaning climate change champion. And then fast forward, Trump is elected in 2016. We have the pandemic and Musk kind of more publicly moved towards the right. I think the clip that you just heard really speaks to this long-standing beef that Musk has had with President Biden that goes way back to like August of 2021 when Biden invited Detroit automakers to the White House to kind of celebrate electric vehicles, and Tesla was notably not invited. Yeah. And that is like this snub that still eats away at him.
Yeah, it still sticks in his craw. And we're gonna dive in depth into that in 1 second. But before we do, Max, chameleon is a term I've heard you also use a lot for Musk in his politics.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Dana didn't mention, but of course, George W. Bush was president, during the early days of SpaceX and during Musk's early engagement with Tesla. And there was sort of an even earlier era of Musk talking about Tesla and his whole empire in kind of vaguely libertarian terms. I mean, people think of him as this environmentalist, but early on, the whole pitch from Tesla was that it was a better sports car than a Porsche. Elon was a Porsche driver, and he was like, I'm going to make a car that's even better than this. And I think that was kind of pitched to appeal to the kind of George W. Bush, compassionate conservatism. So he's moved over the years, and I think what's sort of notable about the Biden beef that Dan is bringing up here is sort of just how wrong-footed Elon Musk has been. This is like the first time since the Bush administration where he hasn't been able to find a way to get on good terms with the person who's in the White House.
Everyone wants to talk about the snub. So let's go into it. Elon at DealBook spoke at length about it and sort of spoke about it in kind of somewhat raw terms. It's clearly still very personal to him.
I mean, without doing nothing to provoke the Biden administration, they held an electric vehicle summit at the White House and specifically refused to let Tesla attend. This was in the first 6 months of the administration. And we inquired, we literally make more electric cars than everyone else combined. Why are we not allowed? Why are you only letting Ford, GM, Chrysler, and UAW, and you're specifically disallowing us from the EV summit at the White House? We'd done nothing to provoke them. Then Biden went on to add insult to injury and publicly said that GM was leading the electric car revolution. This was in the same quarter that Tesla made 300,000 electric cars and GM made 26. Does that seem fair to you?
So, Dana, you indeed can hear in his voice how it still really bothers him. I mean, the truth of the matter is he's got something of a point here. It would be a little bit like talking about the Professional Football League and convening a conference with it and not inviting the NFL, right?
Well, I think it's beyond that. I mean, it's not just the omission of Tesla. It's that Biden went sort of above and beyond to heap praise onto General Motors and Mary Barra. And, Biden visited this GM factory in Detroit, and he took a spin in an electric Hummer, and he said, Detroit's leading the world in electric vehicles. And he sort of, praised Mary Barra as like leading the revolution. I mean, that is really not fair. Any history of the EV industry knows that GM really fought tooth and nail against Tesla's ability to sell to consumers directly. They had the EV1 program that they shuttered. So it's not just that Tesla is like omitted from all of these like pomp and circumstance shows at the White House lawn. It's that like Biden is like heaping praise on GM and like barely mentioned Tesla at all until we called him out on it. And that's what feels very personal for Musk. And that's why going into this election cycle, like he is not inclined to vote for a man who he has publicly called a damp sock puppet.
He's extrapolating beyond Biden to, in the last midterm, he said, don't vote for Democrats.
Right. He has indeed gone from Biden to the whole Democratic Party.
It might not be fair, but it's politics. It's not surprising that Joe Biden, a kind of Democrat who ran on pro-union, bring the jobs back to Detroit type credentials, would go around celebrating union auto shops, especially given, Elon Musk's history with unions, which we've talked about on the show all the time. And of course, Elon Musk is not used to this. He's not used to dealing with this kind of politician in Joe Biden. And it's surprising to me that he hasn't tried to find a way to embrace Bidenomics or whatever you want to call Joe Biden's politics, because, of course, he could. He has a very compelling pitch to offer Democrats if he wanted to.
Right. So you're basically saying that the chameleonic Musk of years past would have gotten over the hurt feelings or whatever, and it would just rolled with this.
That's what I would have expected. What may be going on here is just that Elon Musk is a lot bigger than he was earlier. So in the old days, any president is going to single out a American job creator startup from Silicon Valley that's doing pretty well. Suddenly we have this guy who is the world's richest man, who is, has a political voice, has spoken out against unions in the past, and that makes him harder perhaps for somebody like Biden or really any presidential candidate to just fully embrace.
Especially with the backdrop of income inequality, inflation, people not being able to, afford basic things in their minds, even if it's improved. I think he really wants to speak to the working class in America, and being really close with the world's richest man is not a good look.
And let's be honest, Michigan is critically important to Biden's reelection campaign. The Detroit automakers are based in Michigan. There is no real value add to cozying up to a billionaire who has moved to Texas. Yeah,
so he's got plants in California, foregone conclusion in elections, and Texas, foregone conclusions in election. Michigan, always, up for grabs, which again comes back to Max's point about chameleonic Musk. In the past, would have just sort of seen it for what it is. But let me throw this at you, Dana. I mean, is it also possible that his ability to roll with Biden and find a way to become simpatico with him also just perhaps reflects how the pandemic actually really affected him and sort of, by him meaning Elon, and just kind of drove him ideologically further to the right?
That's part of it. I think what's weird about this is that Biden's Inflation Reduction Act heaps billions of dollars onto climate change efforts through everything from like a manufacturing tax credit, which Tesla really benefits from, to funding for electric vehicle chargers all over the United States, to a 10% credit for refining raw minerals in the U.S., which is why Tesla, now has this lithium refinery in Corpus Christi. So, but, Musk, as much as he likes to sort of portray himself as being a self-made man, really does benefit from government programs designed to combat climate change. So you would think that there would be some kind of détente where they could put the personal grudge aside and just sort of, move forward and talk about the benefits of the IRA. But that's not happening. And I think what was so wild about these clips that we just heard from DealBook is Musk is saying he's not inclined to vote for Biden, but he hasn't yet endorsed a Republican candidate either. And that Republican field is really narrowing. And it's like, what is his game here? Like, he sort of, did this big show of coming out with DeSantis. Then he sort of was flirting with Vivek. But now he's saying he's not inclined to vote for Nikki Haley. So like, who's left? Like, is Musk gonna get behind Chris Christie?
Right. Well, Max, you describe it like he's basically getting behind a handful of rump candidates.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing in that clip that to me is most surprising, his refusal or hesitancy to say that he would vote for Donald Trump, who is, way ahead in the Republican primaries. He's the presumptive nominee. And to me, it just shows how politically marooned Musk is. So in certain ways, right, okay, he's got some beef with the Democrats. Fine. That kind of makes sense. But he also has beef with Donald Trump. Trump has responded.
How has he responded?
Trump has responded by insulting him back, on the campaign trail. And it's not that surprising because Trump, like Biden, also wants to win over these auto workers, right?
But I don't think that Musk really works in alliances. I think he works in enemies. And I think that deciding that Biden and the Democrats are enemies is more important to him than deciding which Republican he wants to align with and support, because he needs all of them right now. Like, he needs the state-based politicians for launching his rockets, selling his cars, all of those regulations around car sales are very state oriented. So what's the benefit to him of making any choices right now?
He's got a lot of, to Sarah's point, business interest in Florida, right? I mean, let's start back at the beginning, right? Didn't this election cycle start for him with the Ron DeSantis X launch that went oddly, Max?
Yeah. He Ron DeSantis launched his presidential candidacy on X. Elon had actually praised DeSantis before. I believe he in fact said he was inclined to support DeSantis in 2024. Then Elon sort of shifted to Vivek Ramaswamy as Dana is saying, and he's at times expressed, a little curiosity about RFK, who's, was running as a Democrat.
He hosted him on a
now running
Spaces.
He hosted him on X, and RFK, of course, now running as an independent. And I think in all these candidates, you can see why there's appeal to for somebody like Elon Musk.
Now, Dana, tell us, how historically involved has he been as a donor and activist? Does he plunk down a lot of money in these elections traditionally?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the big thing. Musk is a loud voice, but he is not a big donor. He doesn't have a PAC that we know of. He's always donated very small to both sides of the aisle, but never been a big player in presidential campaigns. He's not like a bundler. I mean, there are a lot of big money donors on both sides, who typically give a lot to presidential campaigns, and Musk has never been that way. So that's what's sort of curious to me as we head into 2024. What does an endorsement from Musk even mean? Does he give you money, or does he just sort of platform you on his platform?
Well, right, but Sarah, so that is a pretty big platform, right?
Well, this will be the first election where he owns X. There was obviously the midterms, where he put his finger on the scale saying, don't vote for Democrats, vote for Republicans. And this presidential election is going to have obviously much bigger consequences, and he can really shape the narrative however he wants. He's shown us that he will promote his own tweets. He will, decide what content stays and goes, decide when to ban people and how to ban them, if at all, and keep them posting. So even though X has declined in advertiser revenue, in some of its clout, it still has this outsized impact on the political conversation because it is the real-time network. And so if he is open about who he's supporting, you can imagine that we'd want to know a little bit more about how X is treating that decision, if at all, in its algorithm, in its moderation choices, in its advertising choices. It could have a big impact.
Just to push back a little bit on what Sarah was saying, I think there's always been real questions about how influential Twitter has actually been on the political process. It definitely gets things in front of journalists. So insofar as there are journalists still on X, which they are to some extent, but not as much as they used to be, there's potential for influence there. But just, counterpoint is Vivek Ramaswamy did really well on X. He was embraced by Musk, platformed by Musk, and he has gone absolutely nowhere in the Republican president. He's at something like 5% in, polls in Ohio, Iowa, and New Hampshire. So I don't know how big the impact really is going to be.
You don't just have to think about what he does, but what he chooses to not do. I think about what Twitter did after the January 6th insurrection. They banned Trump. They started fact-checking people. They sort of tamped down the radicalization that was happening, not entirely, but enough. Alongside Meta, there was this united front by the platforms that they needed to do, frankly, too little too late. But I think, as a lot of people thought of it that way, but I think that shows, if you have a platform with fewer rules around political speech, as Musk says he cares deeply about, how quickly are people going to radicalize in a situation where they disagree with the outcome?
All right, we do indeed need to talk sports. So we'll segue to there. Okay, welcome back. So as we've talked about in the past, advertisers have been fleeing X in droves. This topic came up in the DealBook interview, and it was the most explosive moment by far.
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself. But go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Okay, Sarah. So that's the landscape out there right now. That's the tone right now between Elon Musk and X versus or vis-a-vis its corporate clients. But one remains and remains pretty close to X, and that is the National Football League, the NFL. Why?
There's a lot of history there. Twitter had a CFO who was the former CFO of the NFL, Anthony Noto. And back around the 2016-2017 era, he created a lot of deals, including a deal for Thursday Night Football to be streamed on Twitter, which is what it was called back then.
We've trained you too well, Sarah. It's X.
I know. I just spend too much time covering this company. But that was a big deal because Twitter has a much smaller audience, but at the time it was considered the only place where those kind of real-time conversations occur. If somebody has an amazing touchdown or if somebody gets injured, you are going to see people just posting about it, even out of context, assuming that everyone else on Twitter that they follow or that is in their community is also watching the game. And that made sports more fun. And it made it something that was this shared experience, even if you weren't watching the game with friends, you could feel like that excitement.
And that community remains.
That community doesn't have anywhere to go. I mean, I think it's kind of a default. You're on Twitter because, like, that's where your people are. I will say I've seen the NFL start to embrace other platforms more. They're not really finding, it doesn't seem like they're finding an alternative either. They have to be on X, and there's not many brands that can say that they have to be there still.
Now, the NFL is the most dominant sports league in this country. And frankly, in terms of all entertainment, it pretty much dominates the U.S. landscape. You look at the top 8 most watched shows all of last year, 1 through 8 are all NFL football games. You look at the top 20 most valuable sports franchises in the U.S., 15 of the 20. Does this relationship with the NFL at a time when so much is going wrong for X, Sarah, is it actually a road to financial viability? Is it a model they can work off of, or is it ultimately still just too small in scale to add up?
Well, I think it's a legacy thing. I don't think it's something that they're building. That's just the default behavior from the years of work that Twitter did before. And in fact, what we are seeing is the algorithm is changing on Twitter to be more about entertainment, less about real time. And we've seen Musk embrace memes and posts that are maybe a little older, posts from people you may not be following. And so it doesn't seem to me like Twitter being the place where you go to see what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
Is really the thing anymore. See what he has done with news links. He's downranked them. I think that used to be the soul and heartbeat of Twitter. If it still got that, it's because
it's just
nobody else has figured it out.
And so to that point, like, that tweak to the algo seems very important, right? If in the past, indeed you wanted to know which wide receiver to start in your fantasy league, and so tweets on who was injured and who was going to play were enormously important. You needed that information immediately. If that's being downplayed as the app becomes more of an entertainment site, that does indeed seem like a problem, especially, Max, at a time when gambling is exploding in the U.S. And I was at a game earlier this year, and the guys behind me were making all these in-game bets, right? And so, like, you need that real-time information, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like what Sarah's saying is right. I mean, it's the platform. It's not as useful for sports as it used to be. Like, I use it all the time to look
gamble?
at. No, not to gamble, but to look at who's starting in the NFL, to look at soccer transfer news, to figure out if the Mets, which scrub pitcher the Mets are going to sign
bring
next.
The Mets up here.
And you have to kind of work at it, because
Because of the tweaks to the algo.
Yeah, because of the tweaks to the algo. But you can do it. And the sports influencers, as Sarah's saying, they haven't left. They're still there. And the thing about sports that is really good for Twitter, sports is just like an avalanche of developments, of ups and downs, and funny stuff you want to react to. So it's sort of perfect for that. And I think the gambling thing actually is a huge gift to Elon Musk, because of course they're having huge problems with all these brand advertisers. We've seen some announcements about efforts to go after small businesses. I mean, sports gambling websites, there's a lot of money there. Those are companies.
Well, he wants X to be the everything app, right? He's going to ask for your credit card information, and he wants you to do payments. So if you can gamble on X, that would be perfect for Elon.
Yeah, totally. And so it definitely seems like this is something they can build on. I also don't think it's something that's going to go away anytime soon, for all the reasons Sarah is saying. Like, there isn't another.
There's no other. Right.
Threads isn't better for this.
I have a question about advertising on X. What's the NBA doing? Because the NBA is so player-driven versus owner-driven. You have really big names like LeBron James, who used to have huge followings. Like, is he still on X? And is the NBA doing anything around their advertising, or are they still on it as well? Because if we're talking about sort of culture war politics, the NFL and the NBA are just very different, and I'm just sort of curious about that.
I haven't seen any recent statements from them, but I will say that I thought it was really funny when Musk started this kind of premium verification product that he wanted people to buy that actually didn't have anything to do with whether you were who you say you are. He doled it out to some celebrities who were kind of surprised by it and confused about why they got blue checks without paying, sort of to create the impression that these celebrities were paying and that it was a cool hit product that you needed to buy.
Sarah, last thing before we move on here. X's CEO, Linda Yaccarino, she keeps Xing about, tweeting, Xing, posting. I guess Musk said post is the word he wants us to use. Keeps posting about the NFL and football, but she's doing so in a sort of odd way. She'll just post, right, like football, heart, right? Like what do we make of the Linda Yaccarino football tweets? Posts, I should say.
Oh, to get inside her head. I mean, I think that she is in a tough position right now because she needs to create the impression that Twitter is a place where advertisers want to put their money and that are excited about hanging out and building their communities. And at the same time, she is dealing with an owner and CTO who is doing everything in his power to alienate some advertisers, including telling some of them at the DealBook conference to go F themselves, and specifically calling out Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, which was a very major advertiser for Twitter for a long time. So, yeah, she's got to take what she can get.
We've got to talk Cybertruck again. The launch was last week. We spent a fair amount of time talking about it last week, and then they launched 2 days later. I'm going to go around the room here, and I want everyone to hit me with one thought they had. We'll start with our Tesla expert, Dana Hull.
Why was Elon standing in the dark on stage? It was a very, very weird, underwhelming, short presentation.
Okay. And do we have a theory, Dana, as to why he was standing in the dark on stage?
To be fair, I have not been invited to a Tesla event in a while, but I have been to them in the past, and they were like showstoppers. They were like these very highly orchestrated LA, high production value, incredible events. Like the Model 3 launch, the semi-truck launch, they were awesome. And then watching this on the live stream, I'm like, okay, this is very underwhelming. The big thing people want to know are price and range. Elon Musk did not talk about either during his 20-minute presentation. It was like showing video clips of performance, but nothing about the key specs.
Because the price is higher than they had it indicated would be,
and the range is lousier.
Lower.
Yeah.
Right. So those are probably two. All right, Sarah Fryer.
I mean, this thing just doesn't seem that safe. Like maybe for the driver, but if you're on the road and a Cybertruck's coming at you, I just wouldn't want to be, I don't know.
So I'm with you. Like, as I look at that thing, the epiphany I had over the weekend, this thing is all stainless steel and it's built like a missile. No, I mean, it's going to be pretty dangerous.
I mean, our former colleague Sean O'Kane had a great point. This is like EV for doomers. I mean, they made this kind of feeling during the whole presentation that this is a vehicle that you can drive on Mars or other planets. Yeah. This is the vehicle for escaping the apocalypse. It's like, when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, this is the vehicle that you want to be in. But what
in your car turns into the weapon that will smash the zombies out of your way, right?
Yeah, that was definitely the vibe.
That's like not good for reality. There are, kids playing on the street and stuff.
So Sarah, you and I are aligned here. So Max, that leaves you.
So I was just gonna say, like, I am very conflicted on this because, like, I'm a cyclist and a runner, and on the other hand, like, a truck that smashes zombies, like, it doesn't. I see the appeal. But anyway, the thing that I was surprised by, which is actually related to this, is that this truck is not going to be street legal in Europe, because European regulators, for safety reasons, require trucks to have rounded edges. Like,
totally.
And so, like, you can't even sell this thing in Europe, which, I hate to say it, kind of increases the appeal for me.
The contrarian in you.
Yeah. But the other thing that I find just head scratching is the steering thing. Like, I read a review. There's a Top Gear review of the truck. It's largely positive, but it really doesn't like the steering. This drive-by-wire system where you can't turn the wheel. You're turning the wheel sort of very small distances to get it to turn, and which is a feature in high-end sports cars, but which the Top Gear testers said was weird, especially at slow speeds.
So they're out. The people are driving them already, Dana. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla turned over, 12 of them to the first customers last Thursday night. We'll see in January how many they actually deliver in December. But yeah, people have them. Some automotive journalists got early access to them. Some influencers were able to drive them. The other thing that's really interesting is there's this whole product called the range extender, which you can buy for $16,000 that will add vehicle range to the battery. But they didn't talk about that during the presentation either. And that's like a big thing for a company that's kind of known for making the best range batteries in the business to come out with a product that, if you really want the range that was promised 4 years ago, you've got to buy this $16,000 thing that gets embedded into the back of your cab. People are bummed out about that.
It seems un-Tesla like. So, all right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this Cybertruck does. Thanks for listening to Elon Inc. And thanks to our panel, Sarah, Dana, Max.
Great to be here.
See you next week.
Thanks for having us.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wang. Naomi Shavin and Rehan Harmansi are our senior editors. The idea for this very show also came from Rehan. Blake Maples handles engineering, and we get special editing assistance from Jeff Grocott. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. Thanks a bunch to Business Week editor Joel Weber. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcast and our executive producer. I am David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.